All right, we are so excited to have Lindsey Kaalberg here, the owner of Ritual Hot Yoga. And Lindsey is our high-performing business owner of the year for 2018. So each year we select from our coaching clients someone that exemplifies all the pieces of a high performer. Somebody that is growing their business, running their business, constantly kind of pursuing their potential. We have very specific criteria that we look for, displays in leadership, of growth with their facilities, and we're going to get into all that. But I'm really excited to be able to talk with Lindsey today and find out a little bit about, one, about her success, but also the challenges she's experienced in growing her business. So Lindsey, thank you so much for joining us today, and congratulations.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for having me.
So Lindsey, tell us a little bit about Ritual Hot Yoga. Tell us about the business, paint us a 30,000-foot view picture of it.
Yes, so Ritual Hot Yoga is a high-end hot yoga studio, and we have really attempted to create this boutique, luxurious feel in the fitness industry. So we focus on upper middle class as our target market, people who are willing to put a little bit more money into a premium product offering. So our studio, to serve that high-end clientele, we're all inclusive. So we have yoga mats, towels, water, you name it, we've got it. And we have 2 teachers in every single classroom. So that way you get hands-on adjusts as well as the teacher coming around and teaching and giving adjustments in the room. And we offer a single product. So we don't dilute, our schedule with, we've got yoga with weights and then a restorative yoga class, so on and so forth. So that way the consumer, all they have to think about is, I'm going to class today or not. So that's basically the front end business model. And then the back end is what I'm truly passionate about. And that is our revolutionary teacher model. So what we do that is different than most studios in the yoga industry and really in the fitness industry is we hire our teachers as full-time salaried employees. So what this means is that they work for us, 40 hours a week. And with that, we offer them sick time, PTO, they get a 401k, they have health benefits. So it's a really all-encompassing benefits package. And the reason why we do that is the mission behind the whole brand, behind the whole company, is to revolutionize the yoga industry and provide a career paths for teachers who currently, right now, sometimes struggle to make ends meet. So, and with that, we found a greater amount of loyalty amongst our teachers. They're so invested in the business and thus are able to offer this premium product that we have on the front end.
I think that's so awesome. When we first started rebranding ourselves, one of the big things that we wanted to do was help people create those careers. So help them be able to build the businesses where they have those careers in fitness. We felt like so many people, they start out, they struggle, and then if they have success in the gym, they don't have really any career path. So I've just got to go open my business, and that may not be what they want to do at all, but there's no next step. So it takes successful business owners to be able to run the business that can provide them careers where they get to do all these things and still pursue their passion. So that's so cool. I am so glad to hear that that's the mission. I had no idea about that before the call today. So that's awesome. And to paint the picture for people, some of the growth Lindsey's been through now, she has 3 studios, and one opened in May of last year. And I'm going to read these numbers off here, but her average revenue was $130,000 a month throughout 2018. She has a PR of 144. Now, those are awesome, impressive numbers. What's even more impressive to me was in 2017, you were doing $85,000 a month. And so that's a 50-some% increase in gross revenue, 53%, I think, in gross revenue. Now, when you're at that level, 53% when you're at $10,000 a month is one thing. 53 when you're doing $1 million a year, that's a whole other thing. So that's impressive growth. How were you able to do that? How were you able to scale so fast?
Oh, that's a great question. And it's funny because even you reading those numbers, It doesn't feel like that on my end, if that makes any sense. So I think the biggest way that we've been able to do that, that I've been able to really lead the company to do that, is I am always thinking that we should be doing better. Like, we haven't hit, even though we've had this tremendous growth, we've hit sales goal maybe 3 times this year. Like, that's how much of a stretch we put for the team in terms of what targets we believe we should be hitting. And I think that is truly the driver of the growth, is that we shoot for really big, improvements month over month. And I stay really focused every single day. I'm looking at the numbers every single day. I know how many, new students we've had in the door. Every day I know how many members we have. Every day I know our revenue. And we focus every single day on hitting our numbers. And if we don't, we're in action immediately. And I think it's that focus of, again, the numbers on a daily basis that has led to this bigger growth when we kind of step back. And, not only that, I have really solid managers who also can tell you every single day, hey, Lindsey, we had this many FEOs today. What do you think we should do? Because we need to get it up. So it's definitely a team effort, and that focus on every single day hitting these stretch targets.
I'm going to come back to the management piece. I think that's really important. But let's rewind before we get there. How did you get started how did you get started as a business owner?
Great question. Well, I always knew I wanted my own business since I was young. And then I found yoga when I was in college, and like, oh, this is great. Like, I want a yoga studio after my first class. So I got a degree in business management, a minor in leadership, and then also started teaching yoga my sophomore year, and then taught throughout college. And right after college, I moved to Chicago to work for Core Power, a large yoga studio chain, to kind of learn more about the business model that they were running and how they were able to replicate. Then kind of got a feel for their culture, what they did well, what I'd like to do differently. Then started working at Lululemon, also in management. So I was fascinated by their business model. How were they able to charge $100 for a pair of yoga pants, and break through that stigma around money in the yoga industry. And then, so I gained really a lot of my leadership experience through Lululemon, and then kind of just went for it. It was a huge risk. I, just quit my job, was unemployed without a paycheck for 6 months, just pitching to investors. And every single person denied us money. They loved the front end. They wanted to get rid of the back end business model. They said, absolutely not with this teacher model, like too much. Do everything, cut the teacher model, and you'll make so much more money. And I was like, that's not the point. So when we did finally open, it was just this tiny little gym, and we made a deal with them. Like, we'll pay you $5 for every student that comes in the door. And that's how we got started. I used all of, any room I had left on my credit cards to buy mats and towels. And then that's how we got started.
Like the ultimate belief in yourself. And then also, I think, understanding what you wanted, the vision, right? When you're out looking for money and everybody's saying, no, do this, and you're having to push back and say, no, I think that this is the right way to do it. Walk me through, did you ever have self-doubt? Like, maybe this is the wrong business model, that, maybe I should go and do what they say, or did you just always know that this was the way to go?
To be honest, no. And that might be weird. I think, there's definitely self-doubt in my abilities, in my leadership, and am I doing this right? Every single day, like, did I make the right choice? Have I made the wrong decision? Every time we run out of money, it's like, what could I have done better? Which still happens. But the overarching belief in the mission that we're doing things the right way has never occurred to me as a doubt. I couldn't go to sleep at night ever, period, if we had dropped the business model. Like, that would be the only time where I would doubt myself. And how could I ethically go to sleep when I just, turn the other cheek? I'd much rather have the business fail trying to make the model work than have the business succeed and turn our back on the model and the mission.
I think that's awesome, like, to have that much resolve, to know you're going to do it the right way, the way you want to do it. And that's also what differentiates you. So you didn't fall right in line with what the market said you should do, right? What everybody else is doing. So that's awesome. Now, as you were continuing to grow, right, before you had 3 studios, before you had to manage all these people, what were the big challenges that you faced? Like, what were the, like, maybe top 2, 3 things that you really struggled with?
Money, I think, for sure. Making sure not just that we were profitable, but cash flows. Learning how to manage the cash flows of the business. And especially with, I'm not sure if other people use like ClassPass, for example, but the revenue you earn on the first of the month, you don't get until 6 weeks later when they do their payout. So learning the difference between a P&L and your cash flow statement, I think, was definitely one of the biggest challenges. Another huge challenge was finding the right people. Our model is attractive to teachers, and also when we were in San Francisco, it was a startup, so it was really attractive to other people too, like, oh cool, being part of a startup yoga studio. And at the time I was just so naive and so like open, and like everybody's going to have good intentions. Everybody's going to come into this business wanting, to fulfill on the mission and work for it. And what I found really quickly was that people might be hard workers, but they don't like the mission. They're not connected to that. Or people might be connected to the mission, but they don't know what it's going to take to accomplish it. So definitely people selection was a huge, huge learning for us. And I think those probably were really the 2 biggest things that we had to overcome.
Okay. And then were there any like big breakthroughs that you had, like whether it's an aha moment, or I'm trying to think if I've had a lot, or I like how I would describe this, where it's like that pivotal moment where you're like, okay, I know, like I made that leap to the next level, whether, my own development as a business owner, as a leader, or, I really figured this out. Now things are clicking. Were there any of those moments that you've experienced, along the way?
Yeah, I think I can think of 2 that really stand out. When we first started, all that we had to differentiate us, because we were in this little gym, and this gym had 2 yoga classes in the evening. They'd had them for 3 years. And they were averaging maybe 3 to 4 students per class. So we came in, and all we did was, offer this luxurious experience. So we brought in our mats, we did the candlelight, so on and so forth. And we had our specific class style, which is very unique. I won't bore you with details, but our specific class style. And I told the team, I'm like, okay, right now, all we're focused on is the product, the class, make the experience phenomenal. And within 2 weeks, I remember I was on vacation, and one of the teachers called me, and she's like, Lindsey, we got a big problem. I'm like, what? She's like, we have 22 people signed up for class, and there's only 18 mats in the room. And I was like, what? Like, this is a great problem. Yes. But it was wild. And within 2 weeks, we had already had our first sold out class, and all else equal, it was just our class style and the experience that we were offering that had driven the results. That was a huge aha moment for me. Like, okay, we got to be ready. Like, what's next? Another big aha moment was when it was, it must have been 2017, January of 2017. We had gone through a huge amount of employee turnover, and we were heading into January. We knew it was going to be the biggest, month of the year. And I was just really nervous, like, okay, here we go. I knew I was going to have to be in the studio every day on the ground, making it work. And after that month, it was the first month where I think we had like a 20 grand in profit that month. And it was like, wow, another one of those moments where we were just so in the day to day. Like, I wasn't even thinking about like how much money we were going to make that month. Yes, we had a plan. Yes, we had a budget, so on and so forth. But it was just that laser focus of every single experience being, luxurious and on brand. And then at the end of the month, we all kind of looked at the P&L like, oh, wow, okay, we got this.
Those are good experiences. So, now you started right off, sounds like, with employees, right? Like you weren't just a one-person show at any point, or were you?
We started with 3 of us.
Okay. So now when you've transitioned to, okay, you had to manage them and 3 people. Now you've got 3 locations and managers and employees and all that. How did you make that transition to like learning those leadership skills and learning how to do that?
Yeah, great question. It's the book, have you ever read The Leadership Pipeline?
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. So that's really the model we follow. It's like, we started here, and then I knew like, okay, the next step is I have to develop teachers to teach the class. Then I became the manager. And then once we had, that going, then I said, okay, now I know I need to develop an assistant manager. Okay, then they've got promoted to a manager. And then now we have like C-levels in the company. So I have a chief product officer. So she has moved up to the point where now she manages the class quality amongst all the 3 studios. And it was really that like development of people step by step that allowed us to scale and to grow and keeps us able to scale and grow right now. Making sure that we don't miss steps. So, now the biggest thing that we're learning is we've got the teacher role down, but now we're really learning how to refine who is the best fit candidate and the best fit in the manager role.
And so as you're learning to become this manager and you're building leadership within your company, what were like some of the big mistakes you made and lessons? Like, then what did you learn from those? You're obviously learning pretty fast at this stage. So I wouldn't go back and say, what mistakes would you not experience? If you have one that you have that would fit that category as well. But I always look at that and say, like, I don't know that I'd change a whole lot. That helped me learn and be who I am today. So it's always like, what did you learn from those things?
Yeah, I think the biggest mistakes that I've made with that is putting people that I knew weren't right in the manager role or in a different role, let's say in the company, like a C-level role, specialty role, because of the people-pleasing element that can come out. I have this soft spot for people, like even teachers. I have a soft spot where like they want a job and I'm like, oh, but this is like our mission and our vision to provide career paths, and they're trying. And so I tend to say yes when I really should have said no. I would say that some of those things are regrets because it's that feeling in my gut where I knew going into it that was the wrong decision and I moved forward anyway. And so like, I guess it was a relearning, like a gentle reminder, if you will, like, oh yeah, you didn't think that was going to work, and it didn't.
So now when those situations come up, how do you handle them? The people pleasing probably didn't go away, right? You still have those feelings. So you still want to help those people. So now when you get that gut feeling, your intuition's like, whoa, how do you address it? Like, how do you know? And then what do you do from there?
I've learned how to really protect myself from people that are not the right fit or culture fit from the beginning. So now, we're pretty strict on like your direct reports report to your managers, and your managers, work with, the leaders of the company. And so with that, I've really trained and worked with our managers to not let anybody break through that level of the company if they don't have certain cultural characteristics. And then when they do, and when I still slip into that, I have to just take a step back and really come to terms with like, okay, I made a mistake again. What do I need to do? And then have just an honest conversation with the person like, okay, this isn't working. You're not happy with this, or are you happy with this? Usually the answer is no. So everybody wants to be good at their job. And, with that, not being afraid to address the person individually to determine what the next best steps are for them in their career path. And it might look different than just going up, up, up. Maybe it's more of a lateral move. So that's kind of how we've been dealing with those issues.
I think it's important to protect yourself as the business owner too. Right? And the other piece, I think that like self-awareness, that you have the tendency to do that. So you put in these barriers to help you avoid making those mistakes or having to deal with that, and then putting the right people in the right place. I think for high performers, they're usually very self-aware. They understand what's going on, or if they make a mistake, they kind of break it down and say, why did I make it? What feelings did I go through? And it doesn't mean those go away. I know for me, there's all sorts of stuff I'm trying to work on. And once I'm aware of it, like, oh, this is a problem. Here's how I noticed that this could be a problem. It's not that it goes away. And I think a lot of business owners, especially young business owners up and coming, they think that it just like you develop this skill and all of a sudden it's like you got it perfected. Like you no longer have to worry about hiring the right people. You just know how to do it, or firing people is no problem, or managing them is no problem. But it's really no, I've got to continue to, it's like a muscle. I got to continue to work on this habit and this self-awareness to then perfect that skill. And so I think that the way you described that was good. And then you protect yourself so that you don't make those mistakes and you put the right people to do that. Another unique thing about your business is, where are your 3 studios located?
We have 2 in San Francisco and then 1 in Chicago.
I think that's pretty unique. So it's, if we're talking three yoga studios and they're 20 blocks apart, that's one thing. 2 in one side of the country and then 1 in the other. What are the challenges you face with that?
Oh gosh, you just don't know what the studio. You just literally don't know what's really going on. So one of the big challenges is it's like trust and audit, I think, is a good way, or what I've learned. I always tend to I trust first. And so especially when I first moved out here, I just trusted everything was happening the way it was supposed to. I got lucky, and it was. But because I wasn't on the ground, one of the biggest things that I missed was the managers there were really operating as high-performing individual contributors to make their studios where they needed to be and perform at that level, versus them being good managers and delegating and developing their first-line employees. So then when we opened Chicago, I had both of them move out here to support the openings. They were both really excited, so on and so forth. And then when they left, there was a huge gap in the business that I wasn't aware of for a few months, because when they left and we put in their replacements, these managers that then followed them hadn't been developed or trained to be managers, and the only examples that they had were high-performing individual contributors. And so while they would still do some of the managerial tasks, they weren't leading their studios. So that was leading to burnout with the managers, not knowing what to do, not having a team that was trained. So then I fly out there, and it becomes very apparent, like, the second you walk into the studio, you're like, oh, got it, this is what's going on. But with one-on-one calls and looking at numbers and just hearing student feedback, you can't really diagnose the problem quite as well. So I kind of realized that had happened. Obviously we're still working to close that gap and get the right people in place to manage. But we've implemented now things like we have weekly walkthroughs. So they're on FaceTime, and we go through the entire studio, sitting in on more of their team meetings, so on and so forth, to kind of make sure everything's staying in check.
So that's how I read into that, thinking like that's how you manage the culture as well. Because that's got to be challenging. I think a lot of when we go to a business owner, it goes from 1 studio to 2, 3, and so on. Like, you kind of build the culture in the first studio if you're there and in the day-to-day. You can't really replicate that in the second one. It's much more difficult because you can't be in 2 places at once. And then now you have a third that's way far away across the country, and you've got to figure out how to keep the branding and the culture and that all aligned. So is that one way that you do that? And then what are the other ways that you make sure that it's all aligned so that you don't have one studio moving off in a different direction?
Yeah, it's a great question. We focus a lot on culture. We have our book clubs. So, right now we are reading Leadership Pipeline. So the whole management team is reading that. There's a great book called Energy Bus. So we all read that. And I find that reading books and like having those grounding elements true amongst all studios is a really great way to keep the culture alive in a more tangible way. I learned that a lot. Lululemon had a huge core library. All the employees read the same books. We spoke the same language. And then making sure, again, that we can stay close to the managers and understand if they're a cultural fit, and then training the managers how to recognize who's a cultural fit within their team. I mean, we go through almost every single week. We have a succession planning meeting now, and we go through every single person and say, okay, are they a cultural fit? What does that mean? Hardworking, good with students, do they connect naturally? Do they practice yoga? So on and so forth. So we talk about it at least once a week. That's pretty much the main thing that we do talk about. So I think that's been the most challenging aspect of it. And then what I did when I moved out here to Chicago, even though the studio, I could walk there in 10 minutes, I try not to be in there. I go in maybe once a week, because I knew what happened in San Francisco and I didn't want it to happen here. So I try to be really hands off, even though the studio is right down the street. So that way I know, like, okay, it's working right now, but can it function without me?
So then what happened in San Francisco is when you were there and then not there, things start to fall apart a little bit?
Yeah, and it happened gradually because, it's all about the people. I always like to tell the team, like, one bad egg, it's like cancer. That one bad cell is not only gonna, tarnish themselves and any students they touch, but then they start, all the other cells around it, all the other people around it have to work harder, and then some of them get infected and now they think they can, slack off as well. So we're pretty tight on getting them out.
I mean, the culture is made up of the people you have, right? So they're the ones that make or break the culture. It's not just your core values or how it's designed or mood lighting or any of this stuff. It's really built up about the people that are in there. They make the culture, both your employees and the clients that you attract. So, like you said, one bad person in there can spoil the whole bunch. So now when you were expanding to multiple facilities, how did you know when it was time to open number 2 and number 3? Like, what were your indicators?
I try to find times when I'm bored. If I'm not bored, then I know it's probably not a good time. Here, like when I moved out to Chicago first, before we opened Chicago, I made sure, like, okay, I'm going to move to Chicago first to see if these studios can function without me there before I have a studio here. And then I waited probably a month of me working. At that time I was like, okay, if I can work 20 hours a week, then I'm probably ready for another studio. And that was my gauge. And that's kind of how I'm gauging things right now. One thing I didn't account for well is having enough money, making sure there was enough of a buffer to open another location. So that's something. Now, as we're thinking about continuing to expand, it's like, okay, bandwidth, on a time and where I can be devoting my time. And then as well, do we have, cash reserves in case something does go wrong?
And then, so what's next? Where do you see this in 3 years, 5 years?
I think, the goal is to have 50 studios. So that's where we're headed. In the next 2 years, probably actually a year, my goal is to start franchising. Initially, I wanted to do investors and self-funding, and for all sorts of reasons, now I think franchising might be a good way to go. So we'll likely start franchising next to open our next few studios. And then from there, I want to see how it goes. If we like the franchise model, great, we'll keep it. If we don't, great, then we'll go back to self-funding and maybe look at an investor route.
Okay. 50 studios, that's a lot. That's an awesome goal. So you do set big goals. So what are some of the characteristics that you think have helped you get to where you are? Like, what makes you successful? What helps you stand out among everyone else?
Mm-hmm. I think resilience, for sure. No matter what's going on and how bad things get, there's 1,000 times where I should have quit. Like, and I would imagine anybody else in my shoes would have quit. And everybody else around me was like, what are you doing? Like, this is, just give it up. And, or slow down. Like, stop. Can't you just be happy with a successful studio? And it's like, no. So I think resilience to power through those moments where you probably, any other person would quit. And I think, I don't know how you would describe it, but the commitment to showing up on a professional level, no matter what's going on in your personal life. Since we've started Ritual, like, my dad got cancer twice. The second time he passed away, I went through a divorce. I moved to a new state. So no matter what's happening, that's just 3 years. So all of these things going on in my personal life, and yet, like, I'm still on the phone every week for our managers' calls. I'm still checking in on the numbers. Like, I don't take days off, really, which I know there's this whole work-life balance philosophy. I don't have it, and so it hasn't worked for me. So the ability to show up professionally, no matter what's going on in your personal life, has been something I've really relied heavily on, especially these past few years.
So the work-life balance leads me to a good follow-up question. Like, I'm sure that there's not a day that's the same, right? And in the entrepreneurial game, you're always doing 100 different things. But like, kind of, what's your daily routine? Like, how do you stay on top of it all? What do you use to manage yourself to stay productive?
Yeah, daily routine is I wake up as early as I can. So, but also I don't have a strict time that I wake up. So it's either between 7 and 9. Usually I'm up for the day. The first thing I do every day, though, is I listen to my audiobooks. So I try to listen to at least an hour of an audiobook every morning before I open my email, before I do anything, because I know right now I don't have a boss necessarily, and I don't have somebody giving me constant feedback. So I know I have to have an outside source of knowledge coming in. So that's how I start my day every day. And then I'll always pull up my calendar. And then I have this app called Todoist, and it organizes all of my to-do lists for the days of the week, sections of the business, and it's also a collaborative platform. So all of my team is on the same platform, and we delegate tasks through there. So I'll pull those up and then kind of look at my calendar and just get started on whatever I have on the agenda for the day. I try to focus more on meetings and trainings rather than action items on the list to make sure that I'm not slipping into individual contributor mode. And also find the balance to know, like, when something needs to get done, you do sometimes just have to step in and do it. So that's usually how I start my day. And then by the end of the day, usually there's been a fire or something that came up. So that means the day can end at 5 with a glass of wine, or it can end, at 9 or 10 with spreadsheets and, phone calls about tech issues. So.
I think some people will be very comforted to know that fires still come up and problems still happen at 3 studios and, 7-figure plus business on the rise. We always say, success doesn't just make problems go away. They just get bigger, maybe a little bit more complex. You're not dealing with the same things at 10,000 a month as you are at 100,000. So, you got to be prepared for that as a business. And, well, what didn't I ask you that maybe I should have about your success?
I think, the thing with our success is that we are showing really good revenue, but our profit margins are still very slim. I have taken it, and this is probably what has built the growth in the company, is that I really reinvest every single dime that we make back into the company. And that's not just through improvements of the studio, so on and so forth. The majority of the money put back into the business is through promotions, raises, and people development. And I don't know if that's the best strategy, but it's the strategy that I've taken, and it's gotten us to where we are today. So I definitely think it's had a big impact. And it's something where I'll continue to do that. So while we might have thinner profit margins, the money that we've put in, I can stand behind, all the dollars that we've spent.
I think that's admirable. I think there's two views of thoughts on this. So personally, I think you do need to reinvest. You have to put money back into the business. You got to invest in your team. All those things will pay you as the business owner dividends at some point. Now, you're building towards a big future. If your end goal was 4 studios, I'd probably give you a different answer on how I feel on this. Well, you probably should take a little bit more. But because you want to go to 50, you're building the foundation right now for that. And so I think that's a great point, because everyone, I think, thinks you cross this magic number and I'll be making this amount. And it doesn't always work that way. Then there's this other school of thought where you have to take care of yourself too. And so I'm sure that you have it all built in, and while you reinvest, you're just not taking cash out of the business, that you compensate yourself fairly, and you don't have to be a martyr in your business either. The business owner doesn't have to be dead broke, but you don't have to be just pulling cash out of the bank account left and right, and making it look like you have a profit, but nothing to show for it. So there's a balance there, I think, with it all. And you're obviously doing a lot right. And I think with what you're trying to build, you have to put it back into those people. You started by building it, and the whole vision and the culture is around the people and the people that are running the business. And I think that's just really cool. So I don't have anything else. You have any last words, any final tips for anyone that might be watching or listening in?
Oh, gosh. I would just say make sure it's worth it. Whatever you're doing, make sure it's worth it. Find a bigger why and that would be my suggestion. Find a bigger why. Ours is to revolutionize the yoga industry. That seems so big and unachievable, but something that you're so passionate about that you'll never stop trying.
So what are the indicators for that? How do you know when you found that? Because I think a lot of people struggle with maybe the why, or what's that big purpose behind it. What's your indicator? How do you know?
I think it's to find the pain point that you want to solve for, and really go there with yourself. I was a broken down teacher, had the moment in my life where I literally resented the yoga industry right when I first started out, just bawling and yoga is such a scam, and the industry is terrible. And I remember the pain that I felt. And so I bring that with me every day to work, but in a solutions focused manner. So, most people don't just get into the fitness industry because it's a way to make money. There's something you're probably trying to accomplish, whether it's you had a breakthrough, with your mental health. Maybe your physical health had a breakthrough, whatever that pain point was that initially got you sparked, for you to get into the industry. Recognize that there are thousands and thousands of other people out there who have that same pain point. And so stick with that and connect with them.
I think that's awesome. Well, thank you, Lindsey. I appreciate your time. I know you got a lot to do. So taking 45 minutes out of your day to share some tips with us and tell us about your story. And congratulations on winning the High Performing Business Owner of the Year. We're looking forward to continuing to help you chase your dream and do whatever we can to support you.
Yes, thank you.